Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage. Now for painting the engine. I've already made a bunch of videos on how to paint, how to mix paint, and how to paint, so I'm not going to necessarily go through painting this particular engine. I will give you some tips though, but we're not going to go through painting the entire engine, but I am going to give you some tips now and towards the end. First tip, this engine was fully assembled when I painted it, which means I ran it on a dyno, it was in a machine shop, there was all kinds of stuff in the air, who knows how much oil or whatever got on it. So whatever you're painting, it doesn't matter if it's an engine, a car, or you're painting, I don't know, the walls in your house. The key to any good paint job is surface preparation. Now there are a lot of different metals here. There's aluminum heads, aluminum water pump, there's a cast iron block, so there's all different kinds of metals. So the first thing to do, besides cleaning, is make sure that if you're going to use a primer, you use the right kind of primer. If you're going to be using cast iron, make sure you're using some sort of metal etch primer, or if you're going to use metal etch epoxy, something on the cast iron that's going to etch in and provide a very good surface for the paint to stick to. That's number one. If you have a lot of aluminum, like this engine has aluminum water pump housing, aluminum heads, aluminum intake, the right primer for aluminum is zinc chromate. So you might have to use a variety of primers in order to get the right surface preparation. Now, there are cases, like this engine, where you can use the paint as the primer. The paint, the Eastwood paint, is a 2K paint, which means there's two parts, a paint and a hardener. And that acts as almost like an epoxy, so it's going to stick. This is the first tip I'm going to give you. So if you want to have success on anything, whether you're painting the car itself, the engine, whatever it is. Number one, you want to paint light coats. The first coat you put on, very, very light, just to get the color even. And then the second most important tip is patience. Let the paint dry. For a 2K paint where you have to mix it, it might have to sit 4 hours before it becomes tack-free. And tack-free means that you can put your thumb or your finger on the paint, and when you take it off, you'll just leave a fingerprint. You won't pull off any paint on your finger. So it has to be tack-free. And that is important because when you spray successive coats on top of something that's tack-free, it's going to reactivate that a little bit. They're going to sort of mix together, and then they're going to cure. For a paint that has to cure, if you are going to spray multiple coats, you have to spray it while it's still tack-free. If you have to wait longer than that, let's say 24, 48 hours, wait a long time to make sure that that paint is completely cured. Because if it's not completely cured and you put another coat on top of it, the paint underneath will still be outgassing, and when you spray on top of it, it'll bubble up. So you don't want to do that. I don't care if you're using a 2K paint, if you're using a rattle can paint, it doesn't matter. Spray a light coat, be patient, and let it dry almost completely before you put on the next coat. So let's get started with cleaning off the block. First, I'm going to spray down all of the cast iron surface with a Metal Rescue rust remover bath. You don't have to use this, but it's a good rust remover for surface rust. I'll just spray all of the cast surfaces. Once I'm done, I'm going to let that set for about an hour. Then just blow it all off. Clean the surface so it's all dry. After it's all blown off, I'll come around with a towel and just wipe down the surfaces to make sure there isn't any surface rust left anywhere on any of the surfaces. So take your time, wipe down the entire engine, focusing on all of the cast surfaces. Then I'm going to repeat the process with prep ball because I want to move any oils or greases or anything that was left behind, especially from the dyno process, starting from the top and just working down. I'm going to lightly spray the engine, and again, Let this sit for about an hour just to make sure everything drips down, and then we'll wipe it off again. Now wiping down, you want to take your time. 95% of a successful paint job is the prep work. So take your time, wipe it down. Use air if you have to get in some of the spots like behind screws to make sure you have all of the surfaces clean. But if you're going to do this, plan for a couple hours because there's just simply no way to rush this process. All right, now we're ready to paint, and this engine is going to be orange from top to bottom. HEMI orange, Chrysler HEMI orange. Now I have piston number 1 at top dead center because I took the distributor out. I want to be able to line that back up. And the owner wanted to have it look as factory as possible. So I ground off where it said Edelbrock and Performer here. And I used a stone to try and recreate the texture on the manifold so it will look okay. Other than that, everything is masked off and the entire thing is going to be painted HEMI orange. And I'm using the Eastwood paint, Eastwood Ceramic 2K engine paint. The thing about this engine is the dipstick tube is the only thing that remains natural on the paint. But everything else we painted HEMI orange. Now that it's all cleaned and ready for paint, I'm going to be using my small DeVilbiss paint gun. This is bigger than an airbrush, but it's small enough where I can get a very small pattern out of the front, and I can turn it down and I can get into all the really hard to reach places first. I want to do all of those first to make sure I have complete coverage. You don't want to do those last because when you're spraying, it's hard to get in those little spaces. So low air pressure, pull back the tip, pull back the trigger slightly and get all the hard to reach places. Then after you have it, all the hard to reach places, I'll start putting a general coat on. But again, this is going to be a thin coat. It's going to be a light to medium coat, and it's just to get the engine all the same color. And then I will let that cure. Now the hard part, letting it cure or letting it dry in between coats. Let it set, go back every half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe every hour, and touch some of the tape and wait for it to be tack free. Again, tack free is when you can put your finger into the paint, take it off, leave a fingerprint, and it won't be on your finger. Tack free, okay? Do that until you have enough coats on it. Now, this is my final and probably most important tip that I can give you when you're painting everything. As you're painting, when it looks good, leave it alone. Adding more paint is not going to make it look better. So move around the part, move around the engine. Even if you're painting a car, move around, keep moving, and you look at the shine, make sure it's even, and once it's even, stop. Don't put more on because it'll run, sag, drip. It makes it difficult. So the patience here is, first of all, letting it dry between coats, having patience for that. Secondly, making sure that you are patient enough to let it be finished when it looks good. When it looks good, stop. That is the most important thing. I've painted so many cars and engines, and there's a temptation. I know you have a temptation when you're looking at it. You make one pass and you look at it and it looks great, and you go, I'm just going to go past it one more time. That one last pass, you regret it. So the rule I follow is, if it looks good, stop. And then once you stop, leave it alone, walk out of the room, go clean your equipment, clean your gun, and let it sit, and leave it alone until it's completely cured. Those are the 3 most important tips I can give you when you're painting anything, especially when you're painting an engine, because it is very, very difficult. This was probably one of the most difficult engines I've had to paint because it was all together. So it took a lot of time. It actually took at least, I'm going to say, 24 hours, 3-4 days to get it right. It has to be right. So it took 3 or 4 days. But there it is, HEMI orange. Now, incidentally, there are 2 shades of HEMI orange. The early HEMI orange, if you look at this, it's a little bit on the pinkish side of orange. It's not a bright orange like a Chevy orange. It's HEMI orange. HEMI orange back in the late 60s. This is the HEMI orange from those years. There's another HEMI orange. So when you go and buy paint, if you're going to do HEMI orange, Plasticoat makes a HEMI orange, and VHT makes a HEMI orange. This is closer to the VHT, according to the Eastwood. So make sure you're choosing the right HEMI orange. Spray a test piece just to make sure you're using the right orange, because you might not get the shade that you're looking for. This is going to look nice in the Charger that it's going in, 69 Charger. And it's the factory correct HEMI orange for that year. I hope that helps you out. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage.